Hello, welcome back and welcome. It's Monday, but I'm back this week. My sound is working. Unlike last week, I don't have to have someone else record or facilitate the panel. I'm back here, loud and proud this week on Together We Feel, and within a topic that's so important, especially for women. Not that men don't have these too, but it's really, really, really predominant for women, and it's suffered with in silence way too much. So we're talking about urinary tract infections today, UTIs. And as soon as you hear that, most of you out there are like, oh, I know what that is. Whether you've had one or you've had 1,000 or anywhere in between, we're talking about it today. We're talking about the real life struggles that can happen with it. We're talking about resources. We're talking about support systems. We're hopefully introducing some resolutions that you haven't thought about before. We have Laura Helgeson and Isabella Thor with us today. Laura's going to share with us her journey in this space of struggling with, dealing with, looking for answers, and becoming a resource for women and people struggling with urinary tract infections. And then we're going to talk to our friend Isabella Thor, who helps women and people who struggle with urinary tract infections with some solutions that maybe you haven't thought about before, that are outside of the box of what you're going to hear about when you go to the doctor and they're prescribing yet another antibiotic that is stronger and has more side effects and may or may not work for you. And so what are the other options available that maybe you haven't thought about that might be worth taking a look at? And then we're going to allow them to ask each other questions and share their experiences. But we want this to be a safe space and a resource for people that know of. And if you don't struggle with it yourself, share it with other women. There are women struggling with this that don't talk about it because it's that topic it's not a sexy topic. We don't like to talk about the fact that it hurts to go to the bathroom. It hurts to pee. And I can't pee. And now I've got this infection. I'm in a tremendous amount of pain. Or what causes them? Or what are the roots behind? There's so many things we don't talk about because I got to go to the doctor because I think I have a UTI. I mean, we do that. We don't even want to say it out loud to people. And, but we want to change that. We can't solve the issues that we're not willing to talk about. We can't create safe spaces to have more open discussions if we don't feel safe talking about it. So we're, you know how I like to do that here on this platform. We blow the lid off the things everybody else has told us not to talk about so that we can find ways to support and connection and resources. So I'm very passionate about this. I myself am fortunate. I've only had a couple of these throughout my life. So I haven't had to struggle, but I know people that have. And my oldest daughter struggled with this early on as a small child. And we had to come up with resolutions for her and really didn't get to a point where we were able to do that till she was, 8, 9 years old, until she was finally able to get to a point. But we had to go through some really bumpy things, uncomfortable things for her before we got to that resolution. And thankfully that we did. But so my point in that is it can hit you at all different spaces. This might be something you start struggling with as a small child. This might be something you start struggling with as an adolescent or a young adult. There's just so many things. It might be something that all of a sudden you're like, we're going to be both here. You've had sex for the first time and you're like, all of a sudden, why is this happening? There's all kinds of science behind that. Pee after you go have sex, guys. Pee after you have sex. That doesn't always work for everybody, but it saved me. So on that funny little note, I'm going to hand it over to Laura. Laura, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. Share with us your UTI journey.
Thank you so much for having me, Melissa. You're just so much fun to listen to. I love that. That is a really good point. Pee after you have sex. But also I want to just debunk something right now that doctors say all the time to patients, which is people have certain feelings about it. Wiping from front to back has never been scientifically proven, or the other way, to contribute to UTIs. So that is just a thing doctors say. And I think wiping from front to back is a great idea, you should be practicing that. But there is no research that says if you don't do that, that you have made yourself have a UTI. So I just want that to be out there.
Yes, thank you for that.
Yeah, because so it's very diminishing to the patient. I did this to myself. Yeah. And of course, yes, we really want to do everything we can possibly do to not have this. And we're probably like the cleanest that you can imagine and all these other things. And it's not your fault. Basically, that's what I would say. Okay, so my own story. I've been at this for a very long time. I'm 6 years old, and I was diagnosed with this problem around age 2. And so I was a pediatric patient, and that caused a lot of trauma for me. I don't have specific memories except for one, maybe two. The one that I have is that obviously I was having a lot of trouble between 2 and 4, and I was sent to a urologist. And at age 4, I endured a procedure, which is now done under general anesthesia, called bladder hydrodistension, where they basically put like a tube into your urethra, and they fill your bladder up to the point where it's stretching beyond capacity, with the idea that will help in some way. It must not have helped because I had to have surgery right afterward. But the emotional trauma from that, not having my mother in the room because she was not allowed in the room, this is a long time ago. This is in the late 1960s. So this is a long time ago. Things were done differently. And so I had this older male doctor doing this. I was alone with him. And it really set me up for... I realized as I move on in life how traumatic that was for me. Yeah. So after that, I had to have, they said that I had a stricture in my urethra. And so I went through urethral stricture correction or whatever. And I had to have I can't think of the name of it right now, where they have a tube inside of you so that you can drain urine. Please help me. For some reason that is escaping my mind. It's what they use for surgeries and stuff like that,
Okay. Like a catheter kind of thing.
Catheter. Thank you. That's the word.
Okay.
It was just escaping my mind. So I do have vague memories of that, but then I had a relatively quiet time, I think, because I don't have really any memories from age 4 to 10, like none from elementary school, kids, nothing. And I attribute it to that trauma that I experienced.
Sure.
Yeah. So I did pretty well until I became sexually active at around 18. And as you said, Melissa, that can be like a tipping point, an entry point for experiencing UTIs. I think that for a lot of people, I mean, I really don't know the research. You had mentioned research, that is simply a matter of sort of unearthing bacteria that's sort of been in hiding quietly during the rest of your life before sexual activity.
Sure.
It seems like that would make sense to me. So at that point, I had 13 UTIs in my first semester of college. I did not get good grades. No, I mean, it was so horrifying to go to the college office, the nursing office, and try to explain to them what was going on. I keep going back and back and back. And so that was very, very difficult. Things got worse and worse and worse in my 20s, to the point where I was just peeing tomato soup, like peeing blood. And antibiotics weren't working. Nothing was working. So I went to a person who did homeopathy and acupuncture, and she helped me a lot. This was so helpful. And she also did this moxa. Is that what it's called? Where you kind of burn like a little piece of something next to your fingernails. Do you know the answer to that, Isabella? Is that what it's called?
Next to your fingernails? I know the burning, but moxie bush?
Well, that's where she did it for me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
No, I'm not sure what it's called, but I know what you mean.
Okay. Okay. But anyway, so that helped me a lot. And I was pretty dormant. Again, I had babies. I had 2 babies. I can't believe I made it through those pregnancies.
That's really amazing.
No, I was in such better shape. I attribute it to having more estrogen. And, it was just really nice to be free of that and even nursing and several years afterwards. I was doing pretty well in my 30s until the late 30s. I had refused to go to a urologist for, I don't know how long, maybe since I was very, very young, like 4, because of the trauma I had.
Yeah.
But I got to the point where I had to go to the urologist because there were no other choices. And my husband came with me, and I had read all of their bios, like which one can I trust? Of course, it was going to be a woman. So I sat in her office crying the entire appointment, and she was so helpful. And she actually helped me with the pain. The pain is horrific. I mean, it is like peeing shards of glass. And anyone who's listening who's had this, knows that it is just horrific pain. You can't leave your house because you run into the bathroom sometimes 5 minutes, 2 minutes. And it just really diminishes your life. So with an acute infection, that is, you kind of just get your little handful of antibiotics and you go on. And like you, Melissa, like that was it. Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
But 30% of people who get this will go on to have recurrent chronic infections. That's a huge number when you think of 60% of women having this in their lifetime. So, menopause that made things so much worse. And, I just started getting into a place where I couldn't work anymore. And so I was kind of languishing in bed. I'm skipping forward like decades. Languishing in bed for, I don't know, 5-6 years, where I just could not get better. As you said, Melissa, I had been now starting to try everything. I had tried the Euroimmune vaccine, which is not available in the United States. It's like a little spray that you put under your tongue. I got it in the London area. I know it's available in other places as well, but not here in the US. And that I have a friend who that did it for her. She just stopped having UTIs, and she had them recurrently for many, many years. It did not work for me. I tried that twice. Then I went on to phage therapy, which is like a virus that they they grow in nature. So it's a totally natural thing. It's like a little virus that they can sort of cater to your particular bacteria. And what it does is it kind of like infuses itself into the bacterial cell and then explodes the bacterial cell. I tried that twice. I did get a little bit better for a few months. And then, of course, at this point, I was developing antibiotic resistance, and that's why I was going to these great lengths. And yet still on antibiotics, because that was the only thing that really kept me out of the emergency department or the hospital. So anyway, so fast forward to last March, a year ago, I had really no choices left other than to have a bladder fulguration surgery, which is where they, through a cystoscope, they have like a loop, an electric loop, something like that, where they kind of, I don't know the exact terms, but they sort of cauterize the infected area and the irritated area. And for me, last year, it was an extremely hard recovery. I had a very extensive surgery and lots of cysts in my bladder from all of the irritation, lots and lots of cysts. It was just littered. My doctor said it was littered with cysts. And so after about 6 months of healing, I started feeling better. During this time, all the inflammation from infection had been causing me to get anemia, which sometimes is like almost worse than the infection because you can't do anything. You're so exhausted. Right. So anyway, with all of this happening, and I had just had another bladder fulguration because I had like 2 to 3 good months, and then the symptoms started again. And the second one was much better. I'm just recovering from it now. I'm at 7 weeks post-op, and the recovery is much easier. And I'm hoping that the benefit will stick around for a long time, like maybe forever. Yeah, and hopefully, my doctor wants me on antibiotics for 4 months post-surgery, but hopefully at that point I will just be off of antibiotics for the first time in a very long time and just take another medication called Hibrix,
Okay.
which is kind of I don't know what you would call it. But anyway, so in the midst of all of this, I was looking for patient resource in the United States and could find nothing. I mean, I searched and searched. I reached out to Live UTI Free in Europe, and I met with the CEO there. And she's just been such an incredible resource for me, and we work together often. Anyway, I started Let's Talk UTI because, just as you said, Melissa, we need to talk about it. We need to regard it as if it's our hand, our nose, our lungs, whatever, that these are just normal things and normal body parts that happen to people. Nothing to be ashamed of at all. It's not our fault. And we just need help getting better. So I started that about almost 3.5 years ago. And yeah, through all the surgeries, it's been a little hard to keep it running well, but we're limping along trying. Yeah. So that's basically it. That's where I am right now.
Wow. Wow. So much to unpack there. I do have a few questions before I turn this over to Isabella. And I know Isabella's brain is ready to explode because she's got so much wisdom and she's such curiosity. I'm almost to you, Isabella. But there were things you said that I think and this is broader than UTIs, but the trauma and how it impacted your memory as a child, and how we have to be so mindful and curious and careful when we're getting care for our children, and not assuming that the doctors know everything, and being a loud advocate for your child. And if they won't allow you to do what you need to do to support your child, then find somebody who will be willing to be that solution, that advocate. Not saying that your parents didn't. I mean, I think it's something as parents were like, my child's sick, they need help. We're trusting the doctor to do this, because we don't know what else to do. And we don't understand until later the ramifications of that. And so this can be true across the board on many things with children. And if there is trauma from it, how do we help them recover from that? There's years of your childhood that are lost memory-wise because of this trauma. And so the fact that the kind of impact that has. So being a really loud advocate, for those things. Don't just assume the doctor knows. And we're all guilty of it in different ways for ourselves. And we mean well. We just sometimes, trust your gut, your instinct. If it's like, they're taking my kid in there and they won't let me go, and I'm feeling really uneasy about that, follow that uneasiness. It means you're the pain in the butt parent, be the pain in the butt parent. So I think, thank you for sharing about that, because I think that's an important piece of this. Then the fact that 60% of women deal with this, and half of those are chronic. My God. I mean,
recurrent or chronic.
Right. Right. I want to use the right language here. So correct me if I get language wrong, because that is important here. Because recurrent and chronic are not the same thing. Recurrent could be, I get it every year when this happens, so there is a difference there. But the fact that half are recurrent is like, geez Louise, this is a real issue here that we're not talking about enough. Where there's so many things, so many places and spaces. You can't turn a TV on in October and not hear about breast cancer and recovery. That world has done a very good pointed job of making people feel like we're talking about our boobs, okay? And we're not going to be, and we're not apologizing for it. What's come with that is people, I don't want to minimize this, so I want to be very careful, but there's other things that are just as, if not more serious than the breast cancer threats that haven't gotten that same publicity, that haven't gotten that same acceptance and support in mainstream conversations. And I think, and UTIs is one of those things that we need to make more. Heart health is a big one too for women. I mean, women, it's, heart issues and heart attacks are a leading cause of death for women. And a lot of women think that breast cancer is more of a threat than heart because the publicity. Get your boobs checked every year. Beyond that, my point isn't to minimize that. My point is they've done a very good job of demanding the public's attention and making it a mainstream conversation. And the persistence and marketing behind that has been brilliant. And more women are surviving breast cancer today than ever before because of that. Let's do that around other areas. Let's make urinary tract infections one of those areas that we're having those conversations too, that we're having those mainstream acceptance and openness and willingness and not telling people they can't talk about it. And so I think because of these numbers that you have shared, the other thing that I think is so important too is I don't think people understand how, I mean, if you've had a urinary tract infection and you're like, oh my gosh, it's burning when I pee. I've had the burning when I pee. That's not the same as shards of glass. That is just horrible. So I don't think people fully understand the pain that goes with it when you have this chronic condition and how debilitating that is.
Yeah. And then the pain for me shifted quite a bit to becoming chronic pain, where I would, it wasn't so much while I peed, it was more like all day. I was just, I would, sometimes I felt like I had gasoline that was set on fire within my bladder, or there were different days and different kinds of pain, but it was so extreme. And then I had to seek pain management.
Yeah. And see, that's the other thing too. I mean, it's set because of the lack of conversations and solutions, it sets you up to be dependent on other things that can be really dangerous. When you're in pain is exhausting. And when it takes you out of and it has the kind of impact on your quality of life that it did, there's a sense of desperation. What I'm so impressed with you is you've not lost your hope. You keep fighting for yourself. And I think you're such a beautiful example of that, of that from the antibiotic standpoint. We all know, my daughter had to take a lot of antibiotics. We like, and it got to a point where like we were giving her yogurt and all these different things to kind of, for the culture piece of kind of trying to battle what the antibiotic was taken away. What have you had to do diet wise and fueling your body wise to combat that?
I have done every single thing you can possibly imagine. Every single thing. I've tried every single supplement. I literally have tried everything. I've had a very long time to experiment, and here I am. I mean, I'm still recovering from a surgery because this is a killer. It's a bacterial infection. It can cause sepsis, and people die from sepsis. In fact, 20% of sepsis cases in the hospital are urosepsis. That means they're UTI sepsis. Right.
Wow.
And also the other killer is suicide. Because
you're miserable.
People just can't cope with how terrible it is, how dismissed they are, and that there is no hope.
Wow.
And it's silent. Yeah.
See, these are the things that people don't know about, that we don't talk about. It's taking people out of their lives. I mean, not just but their actual lives. And there's not enough conversations about that. What kind of services you've made the connection? You finally found somebody, an organization in Europe that was actually really doing meaningful work, and you do a lot of collabs with them. What kind of support and resources does that provide?
Well, we have an amazing website, letstalkuti.org, and there are so many resources. There are downloadable resources, which are like describing what kinds of choices you have, especially at the doctor's office. You have a preparing for your appointment worksheet with links to different advanced testing options, because so often the tests just come back negative when they're actually not negative, that just the tests are so far behind what's actually going on. I mean, we have the Chronic UTI Australia study called Hearing Patient Voices, Amazing. And that's where they found, unasked, 1 out of 10 people are either suicidal or have attempted. So, I mean, it's huge. So we have, we have a blog which covers so many things, how to advocate for yourself. We have vaccines, mental health, phage therapy. There's a great blog on there. And then we have a free e-workbook, which is so comprehensive, like what's going on, how do you talk to your doctors, just, in fact, I think it's a great resource for doctors. So, yeah, I mean, there's some good stuff on there.
Okay. All right. And we'll get back to that again. All right. Okay. Isabella, go.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much, Laura. That was a lot. And it's 58 years and counting, and you're still here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Oh, that's so sweet. Difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean it. And where do we start? So I want to start with a story of how common this is and how I see medical professionals also struggle with this all the time. I was just a part of a month-long series as a speaker on perimenopause and menopause, and I hopefully will talk about that again because it absolutely is related. Laura, you mentioned it earlier, to bladder, etc. Anyway, so in this series, we got a really nice GP, quite open-minded. Doesn't do functional medicine like me, which is more like how do we reverse chronic conditions without surgery, without drugs, antibiotics, and invasive treatments. But she said that she had gone on a phase where, well, first of all, she started with saying this, which I really appreciated. She said chronic UTIs or UTIs in general are not a normal part of transitioning into or through menopause and life after. They're not. Okay. Same with urinary incontinence. It's not normal, and we can absolutely do lots about it. And then she said, and I asked her, well, have you ever seen any nutritional connections between what your patients are eating or trying out? Often these diet fads are very popular these days. And bladder problems, including UTIs. And she mentioned that she herself had tried to lose weight quite recently, a few months ago, and she'd gone on this on a smoothie bend, so to speak, and where she had all of the very high oxalate foods. And your listeners might or might not know about this, but oxalates are one of the biggest things that I see causing UTIs, recurring and chronic. But that's not the only one. But anyway, here she was.
What are oxalate foods? Can you tell people what oxalate foods are?
I will. I promise. It's okay, so big, but there's just so much more that can be going on. But so think about, she was taking smoothies like full of spinach, chard, chia seeds, almond milk, almond butter. All these things that I just listed are some of the highest oxalate containing foods, containing so many oxalates that your body is way overwhelmed in getting rid of them. And what happens to these oxalates is that they bind to minerals in your body, especially calcium. It can also be magnesium, iron, anemia you mentioned earlier, but that's for many reasons too. They bind from crystals, irritate the bladder like crazy. Some people go down the road of kidney stones. Some people go down the road of urinary and bladder trouble. It just depends on your genetics, basically, which you are more susceptible to. But here she was. She did it for a few weeks, and now she has calcium. I mean, she had kidney stones, and and she sees a lot of patients where they have the UTIs suddenly popping up a whole lot more than they used to. This is just all to say she has so much experience in medicine already. She's already in 50s, 60s, still practicing, and still, even she can fall into these traps where people don't know the harm they're doing to themselves. And this is one of the things I'd love to touch on. And I'd actually like to ask Laura way more questions later, and we can maybe, see what else she's tried. I'm very curious. But I think the second thing I really wanted to get out there is that it's a huge myth that UTIs happen to dirty people, or don't keep things clean, or like, get that out of your mind. It's very much like mold in my experience, where you can have a very expensive, beautiful looking house, and then you peel off the wallpaper and it's just black mold behind there and you had no idea. Okay. And like, it's because the last owner just didn't tell you there was water damage and never did anything. And so it's very similar with UTIs. The causes are not always just you're dirty person. Absolutely not. That brings me to big picture causes that I see. So I want to touch upon a few quick examples because it will help people understand, if you aren't like Laura and you haven't tried everything yet, and where should you start, and what connections would I recommend you start with? So first thing I would recommend people look at is, well, if I take a step back, if we just look at functional medicine, it's kind of like going to your GP, but I do not do emergency medicine. I do not do surgeries. I look at everything else you can do to maximize your genetics for best health and a life without chronic disease. And that's absolutely possible with lifestyle, nutrition, and environmental medicine. So those are the tools I use. And so let's start with, let's end with nutrition, but let's start with something like environment. So if you have mold in your house, and many people do across Europe, I work with people there, North America, even very dry places around the world, they have mold issues. Okay, what does mold do? It does basically everything from causing infertility to miscarriages to autoimmune conditions, heart palpitations. Okay, you name it. But one of the things it does, depending on the species of mold that's growing in your house or your home office or the office where you work, is it really targets your immune system. It can severely weaken it depending on your genetics and your predispositions. And just so you know, your partner or your kids could have no symptoms and you might be the only one to have symptoms. And it's almost entirely your health status plus genetics that determines your reaction to mold, just so you know. So like, don't feel like you're crazy if you think it is, but everybody else is like, I'm fine. Don't test your body. It's very important. Don't guess. So I'm just going to finish the mold real quick. So mold targets lots of things, including immune system. And when immune system is weakened by mold, if you're susceptible, then everything else your immune system regularly deals with, like infections, helping you not get sick with colds and flus and etc. All those things is downregulated, and you're way more prone to recurrent infections, including if it happens to be your genetic predisposition in your urinary tract. So that is just one example of an environmental cause for this thing. And I've seen people move to apartments, to houses, to between states, to provinces, and they've always landed in a new moldy house. And it's just, their old issues don't go away. So moving is not a solution and it's on its own. You gotta test your body, see if there's toxins in your body. Test the house before you move in. And we can talk more about that later if you're interested. But this is just an environmental example. Let's move into an example of mind, because this is a fascinating one, and I've seen some mind-blowing things. I've seen, and this is like, I haven't seen this over a lifespan of like 30, 40, 50 years, but I have seen this in people who've had 30, 40 years under their belt, and they've had chronic UTIs, But as far as we can tell, nutrition and environment is not an issue. It's all based on a traumatic response early in life. So I'm thinking of a case, for example, of a lady who you could almost say, manifest a UTI every evening when she was about to make love with her partner. It would just come out of nowhere. And it's a protective mechanism because earlier in her life she was molested, and it's just something that her body had carried for a long time, and one of those things that helped keep everything away from that area down there. Everything, just attention, hands, men, etc. And it wasn't until she got therapy she did both sexual health therapy, so starting to feel safe touching herself, and also mental therapy, spiritual therapy, like EMDR we've heard of, which is like tapping, emotional freedom technique. Look it up, guys. It's amazing and free. EMDR is like tapping on steroids in a good way. It is very good for deep rooted trauma like that. You just need a few sessions. And I know Melissa has experience with this, but it's like 6 sessions, and it's like a year or 2 of talk therapy. That's how powerful it can be for some people. Some people need longer, some people need less. But if you're very focused and you really want to know if it's a mind thing, it absolutely can be. But for that, it usually follows a very particular pattern. It doesn't really matter. Like, it follows a mental kind of pattern. Like for her, it was every time anything sexual was about to happen with her husband. And relationship was really great and strong, but it was just something else that had happened a long time ago. So now we've covered environment, we've covered mind, and it's so powerful. Both of these alone is so powerful. And now let's talk about nutrition, digestion, gut health. These are all the same thing for me. I categorize them under a big umbrella of nourishment, because gut affects how nourished you are, your digestion affects how nourished you are, and if you eat foods that directly cause harm to the bladder, obviously it will lead to bacterial infections and so on. So for example, crystals in the bladder, we can imagine what happens. There's friction, there's they damage the lining. You talked about cysts earlier. Like, cysts are it's just your body reacting and growing back and trying to protect itself, trying to get, because it's just under so much barrage. It's like people who have work hands, like they have thick calluses in their hands. We can have the same thing inside our body if we have things like crystals from our diets that are not supposed to be in such high amounts, but popular diet have made them very, very popular. Like, have this spinach smoothie. And this is like, spinach is a great example because spinach is traditionally it was only used as a garnish. So if you go to a fancy king's plate back in the Middle Ages, they would take 1 or 2 leaves of spinach to make it look real pretty, and that's it. It's a garnish. It's really not meant to be the lettuce of your salad. So, but it became popular because people discovered, it has so much this and that mineral in it. However, the catch-22 is that things like phytates in this garnish, which we call spinach, they bind to all those minerals anyway, so you absorb almost none of those. But when the culture was looking for non-animal sources of minerals, nutrition, protein, they found these things and discovered them, and they became very popular. So this includes things like almonds, almond milk, chia seeds, spinach, Swiss chard. I have a whole list, and we'll definitely make that available to listeners. But I want to definitely talk about oxalates in more detail if we want, but this is just one example of something I call an anti-nutrient. So you can have nutrients in your diet, and that means that your body can basically ingest it and you can absorb all of it. There's almost no waste. Let's say you have some beef, 80% of that gets absorbed, 20% of it is waste and poop, and there's almost no trouble. There's no anti-nutrients in the meat. Meat is one of the lowest anti-nutrients food ever. But if we have something like spinach, a lot more of it has an anti-nutrient content, including oxalates, which form crystals binding to minerals in your body. Wow. A lot of women have calcium problems. Bone problems. Why? One of the issues is because oxalates is binding to minerals in order to get excreted from the body. But I don't want to go too deep on it just now. But what I want to do is just say one more thing, and that is that antibiotic use, because I look and test people's guts a lot, and I find high oxalate levels in people who have been on a lot of antibiotics. And one of the reasons is that naturally in our guts, we have probiotics, bacteria that live in our human digestion tract, and one of their jobs is to break down oxalates. But the catch-22 is that they're extremely sensitive to antibiotic use, and by the time that most of us are in our 20s, we've had multiple rounds of antibiotics. Certainly when we're in our 50s, 60s, the same thing has happened multiple times over, and most of us are not taught how to balance the gut microbiome again, or we're not even shown the herbal alternatives to antibiotics, which have been found to be very effective.
Is oregano one of those? Oops. Isabella froze.
Isabella's. Yeah.
I know. Hopefully she comes back to us shortly.
Oregano is one that people use, oil of oregano, quite often.
Yeah.
And there are others as well. I've tried many different kinds of tinctures. For me personally, my bladder was too beaten up to be able to even tolerate taking those because of the sort of acidic kind of properties. So I had to heal my bladder enough to be able to take vitamin D. So, I mean, it was that bad where I just couldn't take much of anything. So, I mean, there's just sort of different stages. I'm at the way extreme stage. I think maybe Isabella will join us, hopefully.
I know. I think we lost her. Hopefully she can jump back. She'll be back.
Yeah. But what she says is very interesting. And the thing that's interesting, what she mentioned about the immune system, is that I've had my immune system tested. I know sometimes these standard tests are not the best, but my immune system is perfect.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's just kind of like, well, I've also heard it said by scientists that the bladder kind of has its own immune system separate from the rest, which I think is kind of strange and cool at the same time. I haven't heard too much about that, but I find that very interesting.
Yeah, I think, we're going to come back to the immune system piece when she gets back on, because that is very interesting to me. I think too, one of the things I was able to do, my middle daughter had chronic, sinus infections for years. And so we started using the oregano in lieu of the antibiotics. And that really I was able to get it in capsule form. And it also oil, it's just very strong. And
so strong.
You can't always tolerate it. And these capsules that she was working with a holistic doctor in where she was in North Carolina, and those really did help her on that. So those are really good things to try. Hopefully we can get Isabella back soon, because there were so many things. There she is. Okay, we'll get her back on here. All right, you're back. Oh, good. Okay.
Yay.
So we left off you talking about herbs that are, and Laura and I were talking about oregano. Her body wasn't able to tolerate it by the time her bladder was so beat up. I talked about the fact that my middle daughter used it when she had a series of she struggled with a kid sinus infections, and she hasn't had one for several years now, but we started using oregano in lieu of antibiotics when those would come up. So oregano's one. And she brought up something that I want to touch back on when we get to the questions part that you'll be fascinated to hear, I think, Isabella. But pick up there from, besides oregano, what else do we have?
Oh man, so many. I also deal with lots of people who are very sensitive to many foods, so including herbs. So there's lots of options. But I actually my go-to, and this is going to be super practical and helpful, because my go-to is not herbs for immediate relief and of the infection. It is actually something called ozonated olive oil. I've used this both on my female and male clients, and it works wonderfully. And it's the same thing. You put it on. This is specifically for the symptom, I'm assuming, of, that. Let's go over the symptoms just for a sec. Like UTI, there's a burning sensation during urination. You really got to go a lot, and it's in very small amounts of urine. And I think the other thing to mention, just to remind people, sometimes it's bloody, sometimes it's often cloudy, strong smelling. So these are like the top things. Of course, very uncomfortable, the worse it gets. So if you want to treat those symptoms, Band-Aid, we still have to figure out what's causing it, but ozonated olive oil, incredible stuff. So whether you're a man or a woman, just put it at the tip where the pee would come out. Take a blob of it and apply it every 2 hours to the area. Most people only need to do that for a day every 2 hours. I've never really seen anyone need to do it for more than 2 or 3 days, and that infection really melts away. So what is ozone? Ozone is one of those incredible things that we're using in integrative and functional medicine. It's helping with all sorts of things, especially immune system related, infection related. Above all else, ozone is an incredible human-friendly cleaner. It's much better than, like, you think of alcohol to clean up bacteria and that sort of thing, and sterilizing things. Ozone is like that, but way better, because you have it in gas form, you have it in other forms, and you can put it in oils. Excuse me. And it also brings oxygen to the site where it's placed, because it stimulates a local inflammatory response. There's good inflammation and bad inflammation. This kind of good inflammation brings oxygen to the site, which brings nutrients and helper molecules from your body to help deal with the infection. One of the worst things for infections is that they're stuck in a dark, warm, moist place. And what is your urine? There
you go.
Perfect. Yeah. So what happens is that when you put it at the tip, it travels a little bit through your blood vessels into the area, and that bacteria cannot survive it. The bad bacteria, which is something really cool about ozone, it doesn't seem to be harming the commensal bacteria, as far as we know, or beneficial bacteria, as far as we know, as much as the ones that are causing the awful infections. So it's really incredible. Like 1 to 3 days, men and women, they've both found this helpful. But it will keep coming unless we figure out what's underneath it. Otherwise, if you want to rely on herbs, you have to rely on it to be processed through your body. You might be allergic to some of it, and not a lot of it always ends up in your urine. Most of it's pooped out. So I tend not to use that. I tend to use herbs for gut infections. And mold infections, because you could have mold infection in your gut, including candida, and they make this worse too. Of course, oxalates, infections, autoimmune conditions. So And of course, if your immune system is weak, so will your any reaction to infection. So let's strengthen your immune system.
Okay. Wow. So much here. Oh my gosh. Okay. So Laura, it is your turn to ask Isabella questions. Anything that's come up for you, and I want make sure you include the immune system tests that you had that that continually comes back perfect. So it's like, so they go. I don't want you to ask and then Isabella, I'll allow you to do the same.
Thank you so much, Isabella. Your knowledge is just so beautiful, and I appreciate you sharing everything that you've shared. You know, I just love that there are alternatives, and sometimes I don't know what people are like in general as far as like how successful these kinds of things are within them. Obviously, I've had a hard time having success with pretty much everything, but it will be interesting to talk with you further. I am curious. Oh, I did want to say that, yes, of course, I had my immune system checked and tested in, I guess, whatever way they test, and it just came back perfect. I have also heard that that from one scientist in particular, that the bladder has kind of a separate sort of immune system than the rest of the body. I don't know much about that at all. It's just something that I heard in a webinar that I was at, and I would have to dive deep into that, but that is an interesting thing. Anyway, the ozonated olive oil is not something I've ever heard of before. And
my goodness,
it sounds like
we just discovered something.
I discovered something. I don't know if everyone did that. I've never heard it before. And so it's very interesting. I'm curious about how your patients who are really in distress react to it as far as irritation or any sort of side things that would become welcome.
Absolutely. It's kind of like a pain pleasure edge of pain and pleasure kind of response. So you can interpret it as pain or pleasure because it's in this zone where if you increase oxygen, and it's really hard to just touch only where the pee comes out. You're going to be in that clitoral area for women in particular. And so when you increase that, it feels like the whole place kind of gets engorged. And at the same time, that can make you feel like that, you know, that urethra is uncomfortably tighter. So that usually lasts not very long. That does go away pretty quickly. I think most people it's 10-20 minutes, and then it goes down quite, and the more you apply over the day, every 2 hours, it becomes less intense and hopefully just more of an interesting feeling. But that's for like the people who are really in pain too. So I hope that helps.
That does help. Yeah, because, you know, I react to absolutely everything.
And
you know, other people do too. I'm sure they've come to you, Isabella, because that's what happens when people, you know, they need help that's not helping anywhere else, is they come see you.
Right. And I was very curious too. I'm very pleasantly surprised that you've not heard of ozonated olive oil. I really think it will help, especially just with getting rid of the symptoms that are causing most of your day-to-day suffering. And I had a bunch of questions because when you were giving your story, I'm like, wow, this is incredible. You've tried so much. And I was very curious about, I think one thing I just haven't heard yet is like, what was your, you probably don't know if your places that you lived in had mold, but let's then not talk about that. Let's talk about like nutrition growing up. What did your parents give you? What were your symptoms as a 1 or 2 year old?
Because all that time is blocked out.
And I think the trauma piece. Sorry to interrupt, but you both touched on the trauma piece.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's big, and also for people in my space, stress is a main kind of contributor to symptoms, and so I find that very interesting too. Like current stress not just not the trauma that happened, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm sorry, what was the question again, Isabella?
No problem. Yeah, no, we're having so much fun. The
Michael,
question is,
I interrupted.
do you ever, what's your general diet been and how has it changed over the
Oh,
years?
my diet, yes.
Yeah.
So when I was little, my mom would always make chocolate chip cookie dough, and we would eat the dough. And, we would have standard sort of 1960s and 70s meals like
Okay.
spaghetti, meatloaf, chicken, that stuff. And we'd always have vegetables, but usually they were just not salads. I don't remember a lot of salads. I remember just like
Great.
maybe frozen vegetables. I don't know if they were, but that's kind of what I remember. And I have tried many. I'm sorry, what was that?
Were you breastfed or infant?
Yes, I was breastfed.
Okay, that helps. That's great.
That is good. And then as I got older and kind of had my own control of my diet, I started a lot of elimination diets to see if that would help. And I mean, I tried so many things. I don't know if anything has really worked at all, but now that I've struggled so much with the inflammation and that has caused anemia.
Exactly.
And so I have inflammation. I have anemia of inflammation. My iron is good.
Yeah.
So just to let people know, because sometimes people don't put that together. Yeah.
Okay.
So hopefully I'm getting rid of it and my anemia will get better. So anyway, so right now, the best diet for me is just a very low carb, low sugar diet. And so I mostly stick to that, and I've been doing that for maybe 2 years or so. Obviously, it hasn't been helping me out that much, but I feel better because of the lesser inflammation.
Totally. I love that you said that you connected. Many people don't connect high sugar diets with inflammation. A high carbohydrate diet, especially grains with inflammation. I'm so glad you mentioned that. And inflammation, most people don't know, affects the immune system. It can overwhelm the immune system, make it weaker. And whenever you're susceptible in one way or another, it could be your urine, it could be your heart. It'll show up in different ways. For a lot of people I see, if it's not UTIs, bladder, for women, it's their cholesterol, blood sugar, their numbers are starting to go off. And that's usually inflammation driven. And I was curious, you tried everything. So did you ever
I don't know if I've tried everything. I got tired. I got tired of trying things that didn't work.
My gosh, Laura's human. She got tired. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Did you ever try oxalate, low oxalate diet before?
I have not tried that.
Well,
however, I wonder how much of the it's not necessarily full keto, but it's kind of heading that way. I wonder how much of that would be low oxalate. I do have almonds, but I'm allergic to all the rest of the nuts. But
good.
I don't eat spinach really. I love like romaine lettuce. It's my favorite lettuce. I used to eat it as a snack when I was little. My babysitters would make fun of me. I'm like, can I have some plain romaine lettuce?
I'm so glad to hear that. Honestly, it's one of the safest to be eating. I'm so glad. Even iceberg, I don't mind if they go there.
Iceberg.
Even if it's
That's
just
good.
A little bit of fiber and water, but nothing else. It's okay. It's because it's better than having anti-nutrients. Unfortunately,
that's really good to know.
Your question, keto can absolutely be high oxalate, because what you also see with keto is people are gluten sensitive, people are dairy sensitive, and so they go for alternate nut milks, which includes very high oxalate almonds. Or they go for cashews. They're also quite high. That's cashew milk. You also see chia seeds. It's very popular. And also people are encouraged to eat more grains. And sometimes that can go into the spinach territory, beets, and that sort of thing. Yeah, I think maybe one of the reasons that you're feeling better on low sugar and low carb is, you might be staying away from some of the high oxalates foods. but also just low sugar in general is very low inflammatory. So
I
I'd be
noticed
very
it's
curious to hear if you're willing to try, what it would be like for you in particular, to
the low oxalate.
yeah, just let's see a typical, like, let's say 3 days of food and mood journaling, or just what's a typical meal for you, and then we just calculate your total oxalate intake, and then we would just, well, if anybody's listening, you can do this real easy, and I'll give you a really simple handout where you can figure this out yourself. But like, all you got to do is take a few days to write down what you eat, every meal, every snack. And then after the 3 days is over, go through and write down how many oxalates there are in each thing that you ate. And this might require some weighing and measuring for a few things, but you don't always have to be very precise to get a good number. And then, so I usually just give people that handout, which you guys will get, which lists like all the main foods containing oxalates and how much per serving and how big the serving size is. Then you get the total of a typical day. And this number is really important for people because here's the thing. Our natural capacity to detox and safely excrete oxalates and not cause urinary or kidney issues is 40 to 50 milligrams a day. Oh, wow. However, 1 cup of spinach, let's say, raw, cooked, it's similar. It's well over 500 milligrams of oxalates, just 1 cup. So again, 40 to 50 is what your body can safely excrete per day. Wow. Just 1 cup. And most of those smoothies, they call for more than 1 cup for sure. And people have absolutely gone to the emergency room because their kidneys freaked out. And yes, some people have ended up on dialysis because they've done so much damage doing one of these smoothie cleanses, green smoothie cleanses. So then oxalates accumulate faster in your tissues than can be eliminated. And there's a lot of issues there, not just with UTIs, like nervous system, digestion. I've seen headaches caused by too many oxalates. I've seen bloating. I've seen kidney stones, UTIs. I've seen rashes actually go away like really quickly when you get rid of oxalates. I've seen anemia, but I know yours was not the same. But poor circulation in general, I've seen that. I've seen thyroid dysfunction with oxalates because they bind to minerals and then they get excreted. And just maybe 2 more examples off the top of my head. I see asthma-like symptoms get reduced quite a bit, related to the immune system again. And I've even seen fertility issues, like trouble getting pregnant, go away. And even big one actually is carpal tunnel. I see that a lot with people. So that really eases up. And of course, painful toes. I don't remember what they're called. Like you'll probably know the name, but it's when like your toes get very swollen up and painful. It's really hard to walk on them. We all know the name, but it used to only happen to very rich merchants and kings back in the day. But huge reason is because of oxalates. Once you figure out your number, I typically see people eating well over 200 milligrams a day.
Wow.
And one big source is, and I'm sorry to have to say this, I really am, it's dark chocolate.
Oh, wow. That I do eat.
Yeah, there you go. It's insanely high. And so actually I can't recommend people eat dark chocolate. I can't also recommend they eat super white chocolate either. But I just say you really got to just be aware of how much you're eating because it really picks up quick. I'm talking like 4 squares ish of 70% dark chocolate would be 40 milligrams right there.
Wow.
And
that's your whole day.
That's already your whole day. Yeah.
Well, this is so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's really, I was very curious about your diet because of all this. And I just find that many people don't talk about oxalates when it comes to
Yeah.
UTIs. So I'd love
No,
to hear
I've
how it
only heard a
goes,
few.
Laura.
Yeah, and I've only heard a few people mention it, and they were patients.
Mm.
They
Oh,
were not
excellent.
healthcare providers. Yeah,
I,
Mm.
so
yeah.
it's very interesting. So thank you so much for your education around that.
Oh, wow.
And just a quick note, if anybody's like really gung ho, because I'm like this, I find something out, I learn everything about it, and then I want to do it like right away.
Mhm.
Just take a deep breath, because there's a huge nuance with oxalates, unfortunately, and that is that
Yeah.
if you lower your oxalates too quickly, you go from 200 milligrams a day
Mhm.
down to 50, and that's your baseline now for a few weeks, you could have a huge oxalate dumping,
Oh,
and
wow.
your body is just like, finally we have this extra space to get rid of this, and the dumping can actually be more harmful if you don't
Mm.
do it the right pacing. Okay, so like, look at the handout we're gonna give you. It's from my practice, it's totally free, so it will tell you like how you should pace yourself, as
Okay.
well as figure out how much you're eating right now. But honestly, start with the ozonated olive oil, please,
Okay.
because it will get
Yeah.
rid of that insane suffering that you do not have to
Mhm.
go through. And then let's figure out what is the issue. Let's test your body. Let's do the mold test. Let's do the diet test, and all that good stuff.
Wow. So much good information here. We could talk all day. We're already over an hour. And I was like, I told you guys. And so because there's so much information. And I want our listeners to have all of it, because this is like everyone's learned something today that we didn't know before. And the fact that Laura learned something today, that for me is the win. I
Wow.
desperately wanted Laura to learn something today. We still have to see if it's going to help her, but like, just because I know from talking to you over the last couple of years, since we've connected, what you've been through, and you're not the only one. Like,
Right.
yes, your case is extreme. There's other people that have extreme cases as well.
Yeah.
And
or even
so
milder cases that are pretty horrible.
Right. Just suffering,
Right.
any kind of suffering, any kind of discomfort is so important. You both mentioned at different times, and I want to touch on this before we wrap up, the estrogen piece, because
Yes.
so can you, Laura, you mentioned that you noticed in the childbearing years when you thought it's because you had more estrogen that you didn't suffer as much. Isabella, is estrogen part of this conversation? I'm going to guess yes, because of the amount of perimenopausal and menopausal women that start suffering with UTIs.
Absolutely. Laura, did you want to describe like what changed for you first? Because yeah, the answer is yes.
All the symptoms got worse. That's what happened. Just all of the symptoms got worse. And the other thing is, I started testing negative. I had been testing positive for 40 years. I started testing negative.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even though you knew what was going on.
Of course. I've been experiencing my whole life. Yeah.
But this is
brain
also
surgery.
the problem. Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is like, regardless, doctors love to come back, well, the tests are negative.
Exactly.
And I'm like, trust your body. Do not allow yourself to be gaslit. No one knows your body better than you. If you're getting gaslit and all they've got is it's negative and send you on your way, then find somebody who will listen. Isabella will listen to you. She works with people all over the world. That's just one example, but find somebody that will listen. So, okay. So everything got worse. So Isabella, what do we know about the estrogen piece, and what do we do about it?
Yes, I will promise to keep it as short as possible. It's so big. But yes, please, let's just start with this. Please find somebody to help you that believes that chronic disease is not an inevitable part of human experience, even past menopause. Like, this is just a transition. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so so estrogen. So many connections with estrogens. Number one thing we all need to know is that estrogen, progesterone, these things naturally fluctuate through the transition. That's perimenopause, menopause. However, your internal production of estrogen can still provide enough at a very pleasant, to give you a continuous pleasant experience throughout your life through your adrenal glands. Everybody needs to, every woman deserves to hear that. You do not need HRT. I help women get off HRT all the time because it causes other issues. But anyway, that's not for everybody either. Everybody's unique. So some, it can be very helpful. So to have HRT, but natural fluctuations will happen. And one of the when you're going through the fluctuation and your body's rebalancing, and your adrenals are taking over the production of estrogen, and it takes some time, because if you're stressed, your adrenals will be like, no, we need to make stress hormones, not estrogen. So please take care of your stress. That's number one. If you don't, you will have crazy blip, like estrogen's just gone out of your life, and that's not how it should be. Okay. So estrogen, let's talk about, it affects your muscles. How strong are your muscles? How supple, I should say. Your urinary tract, everything down here, it's full of muscles, ligaments that are working together. If you're not taking enough protein, please don't get it from plant sources, because there's a lot of oxalates there. But just get good amount of protein from healthy animal sources, or collagen, whatever is comfortable for you, because you need to keep fueling your muscles. And the muscles are the sacs that hold the urine. They are so many parts of you that will make or break your experience, including with UTIs. So keep those healthy. Pelvic floor exercises, very important, but just nourish the muscle. Don't starve yourself of protein. So important. And then more specifically, let's talk about very specific UTI connection I found. So far, we don't have lots of good research on it, but it seems to have an effect on crystal formation in the kidneys. So when your estrogen drops too much, it can't prevent all that crystal formation, including oxalate crystal formation. So estrogen will help usually buffer that and not make sure it's not too much. So when your estrogen goes away, boom, your symptoms go up, because now you have more crystals irritating the whole tract, bladder, and urethral tract. So that is the quickest way I can possibly summarize this thing. But I just really want to highlight your muscles. Women are told you will lose muscle inevitably going through the transition. And that is not inevitable. You can actually get stronger muscles, better muscles, if you know how to keep nourishing the muscle. It likes protein. It's almost entirely made out of protein. Please keep eating protein. And then deal with your stress, because then you won't drop estrogen so much naturally. You'll be producing it. And your whole experience will be like what women in Japan feel like, where only 10% of them really report night sweats, but 35% of us in North America or more, and in Western Europe, report night sweats. And then there's places in rural Mexico, nobody reports it. And it's not because they just don't know. It's not normal. They just don't have it. They're just like, what? What's so there are ranges of health, and there's reasons people have different ranges of health. In Japan, they have lots of great minerals in their food still to support their thyroid, for example. And protein is still relatively good there. So they just have more support there. Rural, you get even better lifestyle, stress management, all that stuff. That just completes the big picture of like how your hormonal system can absolutely affect your immune system and your UTI experience on so many different levels. So take care of your stress, eat your protein. And if you don't know how much protein to eat, I've had this resource forever on my website. Go to isabellathor.com/protein-formula, I believe it is. It's been so long. Just grab the free resource. It'll tell you how much protein you need for your age and your health status. It's a formula. You have to plug and play. And it'll give you example meals of what to follow. And why I don't recommend plant proteins, it's explained there because that requires another hour. So please do that. And Laura's experience is spot on. There's absolutely a reason why her symptoms got worse, but it could be a few different things.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for that. So I know we've given you a lot of information today and you probably have a lot of questions. Both of these ladies' resources are going to be in our show notes. I just need a little time to get them loaded. I'm going to have them. I know they're general resources, but I'm going to ask them to email specifically to this conversation what they want me to put in the show notes. So you will have good references. I will also post these on our website with the link to this conversation. So you just go to embracinglayers.com, go to the panel conversation, find today's panel. The resources will be there as well as directly in the show notes. If you just go to our YouTube page, at Embracing Layers, and you go to the show notes, it's all going to be there. Wow. So last thought, Laura, a last thought you'd like to share with our listeners.
You're not alone.
Thank you. Isabella, how about you?
Thanks for saying that, Laura. It really means a lot when people feel like everything is covered in ash and you only see fog. You can't see the sunlight beyond. I've been there too, but for different health reasons. It's awful. You really are not alone. Please, I'd say, speaking of you're not alone, you can absolutely reach out to our private practice one-on-one. You can just use my direct email and I'll definitely give you those resources I mentioned about oxalates, okay? It's just so important. These are not something I have on my website because it's just internal client documents. So my email directly is isabella@isabellathor.com. So regular spelling of everything that I just mentioned. THOR is my last name. So just email me directly.
Okay. Great. Awesome. And that will be in our show notes and with the link to the panel on our website. Thank you both so much for joining me. I hope that this has given our listeners some hope and some things to think about and some questions to ask their doctors. And again, go to Isabella's and Laura's website has got those questions to ask those doctors, the test that you can ask for when it gets beyond the normal, tests that they give you. My final thought is advocate for yourself. Find the person that was willing to listen to you. Don't allow yourself to be gaslit. Trust, your body better than anyone. Honor that because you are valuable, you are worthy, and you get to choose. You get to choose how well you take care of yourself. You get to choose to fight for you. You deserve these things that so many times are like this whole mantra about, well, that's just part of this experience or being this age or being in this season. No, it is not normal to be unhealthy. That's not normal. And it's good to ask and good for you to ask why and use your curiosity. And if your doctor is put off by your curiosity, find a different doctor. So advocate for yourself, take good care of yourselves, share this conversation. Isabella and Laura, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you so much, Melissa.
What a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
All right. Take good care of yourselves. We'll be back next week, but on a Wednesday or a Tuesday. We'll be back on a Tuesday next week because next Monday in the States is Memorial Day. So it's a 3-day weekend. So I'll be back with you on a Tuesday with another Together We Feel panel. But for this information, use it, utilize it, share it, reach out, take good care of yourselves. And thanks so much for being with today here on Together We Feel as we've been talking about UTIs. Take good care and thanks for being with us.